They've been called the Thunder from Down Under. AC/DC's electrifying brand of hard rock is as much a trademark as their guitar player's schoolboy uniform.
It's rock and roll music, good, tough rock and roll.
It was, you know, rib-crunching, skull-crushing, sort of blistering rock and roll.
Brothers Angus and Malcolm Young found a soul brother in Bon Scott, a pint-sized wild man with an outsized voice.
Go to prison and keep him in it, you know.
With Bon up front, AC/DC Highway to Hell.
We drank like it was no tomorrow.
And that maybe Bon had an inkling that he might have been going a little bit too close to the edge.
Musical tribute to their fallen frontman became one of the best-selling albums of all time, as they found themselves linked to a serial killer, in Bon's fatal footsteps.
Another empty bottle.
But after 25 years of rock,
Well, they used to say, lock up your daughters when we came around. Now they're saying, lock up your mothers.
now the death-haunted destiny of hard rock's most enduring band of survivors, AC/DC. AC/DC. Charging high-decibel rock and roll finally exploded into the mainstream. They weren't glitter rockers.
You know, they loved him.
Scotland Yard said the body of 30-year-old Bon Scott was discovered.
Then in Bon Scott died drinking. His death.
I'm really...
Bon was Bon. He was always the same and never expecting anything to happen to him. It was quite a shock.
We wanted to continue the band, but we just didn't.
It was a death in the family. From their native Scotland to Australia. 10-year-old...
To read to us, it was all part of, you know, it was the norm. You know, we thought everyone lived like that.
The Easy Beats became a big hit down under. Scored a hit in America when Friday on My... Angus and Malcolm's band needed a name to match...
Easy on the back of it. And we would toss around names for weeks, and she just said it once.
A cab driver let them know that AC/DC had an alternate meaning.
Hey, you know what that means, don't you? You guys aren't all gay. I said, what? Bisexual, it's AC/DC. I go, oh, we better change.
George, my other brother, he used to try and butter me up. He said, you'll be rich very quick. And of course, you know, at first...
In 1974, Brother George and producing records for a small Australian label. It's a regional hit and led to a small local tour singer, Dave Evans.
You know, he'd go on.
Malcolm and Angus were looking for a new frontman with the person of Ronald Bon Scott.
He was kind of weird. He pulled up in his old beat-up 50s car, you know.
Was another Scottish immigrant raised in Australia.
When we met him for the first time, it was my brother.
Bon was a headstrong...
His mind, that was what he wanted to do, and he just did it.
Bon dreamed of fame, but found trouble and had recently survived a near-fatal motorcycle.
We knew Bon could sing rock and roll, and...
Bon Scott to front AC/DC.
He looked like he'd been around the block more than a few times.
That's reshaped the whole thing. You're a real rock and roll band now.
Had formed a band and found a frontman. 28-year-old Bon Scott was a perfect fit for AC/DC, a hard-rocking, hard-living
And we heard his voice proper then, and thought, geez, that guy's got some voice. He can scream.
They were the Aussie blokes, eye down and fast and mean.
rib lineup. Bon Scott's voice had raised the band to another level, but there was room for improvement.
The first High Voltage album had been released, but that was still...
There was more action going on there than ever since. We drank like it was no tomorrow. We woke up and drank again. And...
That April, the band made...
That was unheard of back then.
Bon's Drag Act served if an album went to #2 in Australia. Their fast and furious style was a hit, and London's burgeoning punk rocked the rest of Great Britain.
I didn't know. Big guitars.
Released in the summer of '77, Let There Be Rock blasted onto the U.S. charts. AC/DC were on the verge of being called Highway to Hell, a title the record company hated from the...
With us for those years up to that point, you would have known exactly what we were.
...were finally paying off. Bon Scott were even higher.
We go back to the hotel, we say, oh, Bon, you know, it's 3 in the morning, you know, we go...
But the new decade was doomed to begin, not with distinction, but with sudden, shocking death. Hymns of the world, AC/DC rode Highway to Hell as fortune.
Are you rich, though? I mean, are you making...
But the wild ways, not even his beloved mother.
Got another empty bottle.
You didn't tell her on...
Bon Scott was only 33 years old, but his time was running. In the morning, he was found dead.
From what I still can gather, the guy was managing us, and he told me, you know, that it was true that he had died.
Explain the death and how it affects you, you know. Everything just is numb.
Hours, everyone in the band knew the awful truth, and the media were already... The band pulled together.
Especially in Britain, they made it a bit of a joke almost. Mainly at that time was Bon's parents. They're really nice people. They don't need this.
Pain of a crushing blow.
I mean, that was Bon's life. I mean, you know, even, Bon had been drunk before. I mean, Bon shouldn't have done
that. All of us had embraced and he'd embraced.
Work on AC/DC's new album was suspended. Bon's parents and mourned the loss of a man who had become brother to them.
When you're younger, you don't really think that something like death is going to touch you. You know,
the town where he was raised. After 5 years with Bon Scott up front, raising hell and raising the roof, AC/DC's bright future had...
Malcolm and Angus.
Ever seen, you know, especially Angus, you know, with his antics. And I was hooked.
And there would never be another Bon. But Brian walked in one day for an audition. We just felt really comfortable with him, and again, he could sing his balls out.
AC/DC Hans memory.
We wanted just a simple black cover. We wouldn't have even done him justice.
To the microphone and into Bon Scott's shoes.
I remember just going up there and just crossing. Nerve-wracking it was real nerve-wracking.
With a new vocalist is an absolutely remarkable feat for them to accomplish.
She was a fast machine, she came on and clean, she was a fast damn woman.
Spawned the band's first top 40 single.
You know, I mean...
1985, AC/DC became linked to the investigation of a murder case in California.
Upon investigating that murder, one of the pieces of evidence that was left behind, AC/DC on it.
In an attempt to track down the infamous killer known as the Night Stalker, mystery man suspected in 13 brutal murders, the press built
a lot more to the significance of the hat than the homicide investigators.
On August 31st, the Night Stalker was finally arrested. The press reported that Richard Ramirez, a confessed Satanist, was inspired by AC/DC.
I thought it was a joke at first.
He song Night Prowler for connections to the Night Stalker. The media frenzy surrounding the Ramirez case horrified the band. As the press played up the satanic
AC/DC, the meaning of the letters, you know.
Center of another controversy when the AC/DC at the top of a list of artists they deemed obscene. AC/DC continued through the mid-'80s, but the band...
Clubs to play. Well, we're cool, you know. If we could play all around the world in clubs, hey, what a life. So we were never, you know, felt defeated.
Still, the years since Bon Scott's death had taken a 28. He finally bottomed out. Couldn't take it anymore.
So I had a talk with Angus, and he said, how would you feel?
He was worried about me, that he'd be disappointing me, but to continue, he felt he'd become a casualty, you know.
And he was a big enough man to turn around and say...
I wasn't brain dead, but I was just physically...
He fixed himself better than ever, you know.
Razor's Edge would slash its way to the second spot on the U.S. albums. Once again, AC/DC was back.
It's a normal age. Yeah, so that's about all I can say about that, you know. It's
1991, a concert in Salt Lake City, Utah turned into a nightmare.
Forget as long as I live.
The concert had barely begun when tragedy struck. Seating was not reserved, so at the time, AC/DC didn't know the full story.
You know, going there. Al had tried to hold it together as best he could.
The band wanted to stop the show. When they later learned that 3 fans had been crushed to death, they were heartbroken.
It was just journalistic opportunity that just went beyond the bounds of decency, you know. The lawsuits were coming flying at us from everywhere.
By spring of '91, the court dismissed AC/DC from a... For AC/DC, the 1990s, like the 80s, had begun on a dismal note. Hopefully,
there's no screwing around, especially with AC/DC.
And AC/DC released their 7th...
The best fun I've ever had in the studio. The best fun I've ever had. And I mean, I think it's gone right back to...
Perform as best we could.
the band is, you know, it's the combination of the guitars.
45-year-old Angus and 47-year-old...
Songs as they write them, and we play them as we play them. And, you know, that's how it comes out.
I think Angus said it.
Plan to keep making this lovely thing called AC/DC for a long...
You feel we're timeless, you know, and yeah, trends come and go, and...
Next, VH1 will provide the music, but the laser light show is up to you.